What I thought I would do is just start out by telling two stories. And I'm going to tell stories of servant leadership as observed by me, the recipient. And these were two of the best bosses that I ever had. And I think these stories just exemplify what it means to be a servant leader now that I'm learning more about it. I actually didn't know that the term existed until Dick shared it with me a year ago. So I was fresh out of Georgia Tech working for the company that ended up buying AT&T, big international communications company. It was my first job in sales. I was 23 years old. Was learning how to do sales. Had this boss, Sandy Thornton. Sandy recruited me into the role. Kind of, went on some sales calls with me. Taught me everything she knew. And we were going to call on the president of what at the time, those of you that are students won't know what this means, but the rest of us will. It was the biggest paging company in the world. Right? And unless now you're a drug dealer or a doctor, you wouldn't know what that meant. But paging was a big deal back then. And this was a big account, multi-million-dollar account. And we're going to go call on the president of this company. Now, of course, I was going to be there to take notes. She was going to do all the talking. So 9 a.m. meeting. We're in Dallas for this meeting. Sandy calls me at 8 o'clock as I'm getting ready to drive and meet her. She goes, Andy, I've come down with a cold. I'm not going to be able to go, but we can't cancel this meeting. Why don't you just take care of it? Why don't you run it? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, I'm scared. I don't know if I can do it. But she goes, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So I go and I do this meeting, and I'm nervous, but I'm really, really excited because now I'm like negotiating on behalf of this big company, in front of this like big president. Meeting goes fine. I come back into the office around 10:30, and there she is in her desk, kind of smiling. And I'm like, what? I'm like, you're not sick, are you? And she's like, no, I'm not sick. Of course I'm not sick. She goes, look, it was time to kick you out of your nest. I knew you could do it. And she goes, the worst you could have done is maybe lost the account for us, but life would have gone on. And her point was, I care more about you. I care more about your development as an employee. I care about your development as a leader than I do about the top line for my company, right? And she had example after example of that, of basically making my career successful. And it felt to me every day that I was working for her, like her number one job was to set me off on a launching pad for the rest of my career. We're still friends to this day. She's been retired for 20 years. And I still use her as an example whenever I can. And sometimes when I find myself not living up to her example, I have this reminder of, hey, this isn't how Sandy would have handled it, right? So fast forward maybe 6-7 years later, I just graduated from Harvard with my MBA. Actually wanted to get into everyone wanted to go into banking and consulting. I wanted to get my hands dirty and make something. I applied to GE Healthcare. Which actually brought me back to Milwaukee. And I used my connection being from Milwaukee to get a job with GE. I ended up at this basic job in Waukesha. Had a mid-level manager. His name was Dennis Cook. And again, I walked in. He's like, okay, Andy, here's what we're going to do. You're new at GE. I know you've had all these experiences in sales and service and finance. He goes, at GE, it doesn't matter. What matters here is what you've done here and what you've done for this company. So why don't we take the whole day today, and why don't we just map out a vision for what your career is going to look like at GE, right? And he says, so you'll work for me for a while, and I'm sure you'll do fine. He goes, assuming that goes well, we've got to get you a job in manufacturing, then we got to get you a job in finance or get you a job in sales, and we've got to get you all these experiences so that eventually you can run your own P&L, you can run your own division of GE. So day one in the job, rather than read this manual, go study this, here's some stuff you got to file, here's some work you got to do, he basically took his entire day to map out the rest of my career. I worked for him for 14 months. It was the hardest I ever worked. It was the longest hours I ever worked, even when I left GE to start my own company. We're working, I remember the Violent Femmes and the Bodines were playing at Summerfest. A bunch of my friends had come into town. We were going to go out. We were going to go to Summerfest. We're all excited. I'm like, I may have to work till 7 tonight, so why don't you come meet me at the office, and we all go together. 7 o'clock came, 8 o'clock came, 9 o'clock came. I'm like, sent them on their way. I ended up leaving work at 11 that night. I was a little upset that I missed the Bodines and the Violent Femmes, but we were all there and we were all working for Dennis, and we knew that he was going to take that work and he was going to turn us into heroes. And to us, it didn't really feel like work. We were working for a guy that had our back, that was watching out for our careers. So 14 months into that, plant manager job comes up at GE. He marches me over there. I get the job, but this is the guy who's like an executive, but he's talking to a vice president. He goes, okay, you can have Andy for this job. All right, but after a year and a half, he can't work for you anymore. He's got to go get another experience because that's what he needs for his career. So this is a guy that fought for his people, watched out for us. And again, I felt like half of his job, the applied time on his job, was making me and my peers successful. Now, to me, that's just the way you should do it, right? And in return, we'd run through mountains for the guy. We'd work 20 hours a day for the guy, right? And now it's no surprise. We fast forward this 20-some years later. He's the CEO of Ryder, trucks and rentals and whatnot. He's had a tremendous career. Everything he touches seems to turn to gold. But the secret about him, and this is a secret that I've learned and try to practice, he never really did anything, right? And except for teach us how to do our job better, right? And motivate us and give us the fuel that we need to be excited about our careers. And that's what I try to practice now in my 16, 17 years as an entrepreneur. I spend about 80% of my applied time at work trying to make the people that work for me successful. And I think my proudest achievement, I've had some fun doing a lot of fun stuff, but you ask me what's my best achievement, that I can point to, I think now 12 or 15 people that have worked for me that are now either running their own company, they're their own president, or they're a CEO somewhere. And to me, that's a testament of success. And I hope in the next 20 years of my career that number doubles or triples. So thank you.